We're live.
Oh, shit.
Come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. Hope you're all doing okay out there. tnholler.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook. We're also hollering all across the state. As you know, thanks to your support, we really appreciate it. Your small dollar monthly donations are what keep us going and keep us growing. We have hollers hollering in Tri-Cities, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Coffee County, all the way over to Memphis. And that's thanks to your support. Also want to send a shout out to Elisa Parker. If you're buying or selling in Middle Tennessee, do it through Elisa. That's a way to help us. Really, really appreciate her support. And then if you need a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld is fantastic. She was one of the lawyers who argued Obergefell in front of the Supreme Court. She's here in Nashville. She's fantastic. And finally, if you need any jewelry, AJ Martin in Nashville is who you should go through if you want to support us. So we are going to be talking to Rep. Antonio Parkinson here as soon as he finds his way back in. He, I believe, either his phone died or he had some technical difficulties one way or the other, but we are going to talk to him. He will find his way back. I know it. And we're going to talk to him about a tweet that we put up earlier today that he took some exception with about a piece that Phil Williams just did about civility in the legislature, which he was featured in. So we will talk about that momentarily with Rep. Antonio Parkinson. In the meantime, I guess I have a couple of things I wanted to show you guys. First is this horrible incident in Antioch. We posted about it earlier this week. We included it in our email. If you're not getting our emails, you should sign up to those, tnholler.com, twice weekly. It's a way to keep up with everything that's going on. And this was in Antioch. An immigrant was selling fruit on the side of the road. And for no reason whatsoever, this guy took exception to that and broke his stand, threw it on the ground, broke his stand. Really ugly stuff.
Grábalo.
¿Qué pedo con ese man?
Sí, grábalo, no te pasa nada. Yeah, one moment. Let's go, man. Hey, no problem. Yeah.
Move your shit.
No, yeah, come on, yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah.
I told you couldn't.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Hey, let me show you something else.
Yeah, hey, no touch.
Do you
No
see
touch.
the sign?
Yeah.
Do you
No
see
touch,
the sign?
No touch.
It's get out.
Yeah, no touch.
Llama a la policía.
Yeah, no touch.
So that guy was arrested. It is a man from Franklin. And I just want to bring it up just to talk about the kind of where we are. I know a lot of people are feeling the heaviness of the hate and discrimination out there. And it seems like there's a lot of it is emboldened. And this man was arrested, and there's now a GoFundMe for Diego, who was the victim. We just posted it today. I hope you guys will post and give a little and share because, you know, the hate's gone too far around here, unfortunately. And this was an example of that. Road rage shootings are up in Tennessee. There was a incident in the park in Nashville where a guy with a gun shot a dog to death that apparently led to no charges. And we're told by the people that were there, the dog was friendly. So it's just scary, dangerous times in Tennessee, especially where, we're proliferating weapons. We are at the bottom in poverty, at the bottom in infant maternal mortality, and people are struggling and angry and armed, and it's a bad recipe. So, I appreciate you guys sending us this stuff. It's really important to lift up these stories. That's one that, we're going to continue to stay on because unfortunately, you know, there don't seem to be any ramifications for that guy for whatever reason. So there's a lot of people following that story on Instagram. A Girl Has No President is one of them. She has been on top of that story. There's also Ariana Kaufman did some stuff on that. And the owners, I guess, I don't know what's going on. I don't want to give any updates without knowing, but it's just scary to be out there, where people are feeling this emboldened to do kind of whatever they feel in the moment and they don't fear the repercussions. So we have a email out this week called Too Much Hate in Our State. Again, tnholler.com is where you can find that. And we came on here, and I guess I'll just set up the Rep Parkinson stuff. Well, he's not here yet. He was in here, and then he had a technical issue. But what we did was we posted a piece by Phil Williams about civility in the legislature, kind of along the lines of what we're talking about all the hate in our state. Civility in the legislature was the topic. And the thesis of the piece was really kind of a both sides message. And we took exception to that. And I'll show you a little bit of it here to show you why. First of all, you'll see Phil Williams walking through the incident where Justin J. Pearson was shoulder checked by the speaker.
Speaker was just coming off the dais, getting ready to go out of the chamber. He had to go through this narrow opening where Representatives Pearson and Jones were waiting. This is what Sexton faced as he headed out. Slow down the video and you'll see how the speaker squeezes through, actually pulling away from Pearson, but then a member of his security detail is cut off. When the officer breaks through, he collides with the speaker, who appears to fall forward, veering to the right to avoid a photographer.
Okay, so right off the bat, I think we all have a lot of respect for Phil Williams. I certainly have a lot of respect for Phil Williams, but that was a lot of words to excuse what anybody watching objectively would see was a shoulder check into Pearson from Speaker Sexton. Yes, Justin crowded him, but the shoulder that came from Speaker Sexton was clearly intentional. Even the Tennessee Conservative News host sees that. And so the idea that we're going to somehow let Cameron Sexton gaslight us into believing that somehow he tripped or, Justin bumped him or popped him, as he said last week, that's just an unserious one on its face. And we're off to a bad start with this clip. Again, I'm a Phil Williams fan. I like Phil. I don't know why he's going so far out of his way to excuse Cameron Sexton's behavior here. Let's keep going.
And then as I move forward and I keep going, Pearson tries to get between me and the security and comes up on my side and bumps me back to the left, which then I turn towards him.
Are you open to the possibility that it was not intentional?
If it was not intentional, the speaker would have said it wasn't intentional. It was.
That seems like a pretty good point from Justin Pearson. If you unintentionally bump somebody, you don't then wheel around, stick your finger in their face and start yelling at them like Speaker Sexton did. You say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump you." So Justin seems to have him there, I got to say.
Accidental. I apologize to Representative Pearson.
And Justin Pearson went even further, putting out a social media post accusing Sexton of being a white supremacist who had violently shoved him.
So I know people take exception to the words white supremacist, but when you're in the legislature long enough and you see the way young black Dems are treated and you see the way they fight for that statue, that Klan statue that was in the rotunda, it's not beyond the realm of understanding for especially black legislators to feel like there are being governed by white supremacy. Certainly there's an element of the Republicans feeling that their opinion matters more, that they are more valid than these two young Black Democrats. And in that way, that is itself a form of supremacy. It reminds me of when ETSU basketball players took a knee and Rusty Crowe, the senator from the area, and John Lundberg told them, what they did was wrong and how dare they, when they were doing what they felt. And they never even stopped to go talk to the athletes, to feel what they were feeling, to hear what they were feeling. They just thought, my opinion about this is right, yours is wrong. And that's a form of supremacy. So that may be a tough phrase for people to hear, but that's what Justin Pearson feels. That's what I believe Jones feels. And their feelings are valid.
I'm not accepting the speaker's narrative that he is trying to spin and trying to make himself out to be the victim here, because that is another tool that is used in white supremacy.
And yet the question is, did it have to happen at all?
The criticism that I have heard is that if you had not been crowding the speaker, this never would have happened.
If the speaker had passed gun violence prevention legislation, if the Republican Party had moral courage to do the work of justice that they were elected to do, then we would not have had this discussion.
Is it appropriate for members?
So Justin is saying there that the context is important. It's not like Pearson woke up one day and was like, you know what, I'm going to go stand in front of Speaker Sexton and get in his space today. What was happening in that moment was the Republicans had just adjourned after 15 minutes because they didn't want to let the Democrats introduce any resolutions, because Justin Jones was planning to call for a no confidence vote. That at the tail end of a session where they kept the public out of half of the balcony to make room for lobbyists. They made a rule that nobody could have signs inside committee hearings. They could have guns, but not signs, and ended up having troopers drag out some of the mothers that had come to witness the proceedings. You go back to the expulsions. You go back to, the statue, the KKK statue getting removed. And that's how we got here. So to just focus on that moment where Sexton shoved or bumped Justin Pearson, and why was Justin Pearson there, without bringing in the context of what was happening in that moment, that day, of Speaker Sexton calling those peaceful mothers and students insurrectionists, that's just disingenuous. So, when Justin responds that way, I think he's got a pretty valid point. Then the piece goes on to talk to first Representative Johnny Shaw.
Of your own party to be getting in the speaker's face and being confrontational on the floor?
And I can't say it's appropriate. That's not appropriate.
Was it a good idea to be in the speaker space? I wouldn't have done it.
And Democratic Representative Antonio Parkinson.
So that is the first clip where we see Antonio, and Antonio, I think, is making his way back in here now, although I still don't see him. Antonio, are you there? All right, we'll hope that he finds his way in front of the camera so we can talk to him about this. But, there's Johnny Shaw and Antonio Parkinson basically saying, yeah, Pearson shouldn't and Jones shouldn't have been in Speaker Sexton's face. And I wouldn't have done it. And then there's more of that.
Appearing here on News Channel 5's Open Line, agreed that Pearson and Jones would have had a right to complain if Republicans had done the same thing to them.
And then I look at, how would I respond if somebody was in my space like that? I wouldn't respond very well.
Okay, so this is where the conversation we were having with Antonio comes in. And again, he's working his way in here right now. But, personally, I feel like, okay, I understand saying something about, okay, I wouldn't have gotten in his face, or I wouldn't have, been in his space in that way. And looking at it from the speaker's perspective, first of all, I would just say the double standard also exists, that if Justin Pearson had thrown a shoulder into Speaker Sexton the way Sexton shouldered him, Justin would have been in handcuffs. So let's be clear about that. if Justin Pearson threw his shoulder into Speaker Sexton, Justin Pearson would be in handcuffs, period, full stop. That being said, I understand what's Parkinson is saying about, imagine working in that atmosphere, Randy Greer. He's saying he wouldn't have done it. Okay. But what we tweeted earlier today was, why in that moment when you're being asked about this, do you not bring up, if you're Shaw or Parkinson, do you not bring up the context that mics were being cut, that they were calling students and moms insurrectionists, that he bumped Pearson, that he put Gloria in a closet when she didn't vote for him for speaker, that they said on a leaked audio that we posted that they were at war with the Democrats, and yes, expelling 2 young Black Democrats. So to focus only on that moment, as Phil does in this piece, without focusing on the context that we got to that moment in. Antonio, can you hear me?
Hang on a second. Let's work through this sound because I can barely hear you. I'm struggling.
Okay, we hear you.
Today. Hold on one second.
We hear you. So I'm just gonna mute you and finish this thought while you figure that out. My criticism of Johnny and Antonio's
we got it.
criticism.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so we're walking folks through this, and we're now to the part where you are.
And
so
then it went
perfect
back out.
timing.
Hold on, man.
Okay.
The Bluetooth. Hold on.
The point was that Johnny and Antonio didn't include all the context of what got us there in this piece, and simply were featured in the Phil Williams story as criticizing what they did and saying, I wouldn't have done that. And, we need to keep civility. And I personally just believe that what's really uncivil here is the way those moms were treated. It's the way Justin and Justin were expelled. And so my criticism of Antonio was that he didn't say that in that moment. Now, he saw our post and took exception to it and wanted to hop on here and talk about that, but he's having technical issues, which is not like him. I would have thought that Johnny Shaw would have the technical issues, not Antonio. He's pretty tech savvy. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Was it enough for them to just say this? And we can keep going and see the rest of the piece. Antonio says that he said what I'm saying. He said that the context was that Republicans are the uncivil ones, and that Phil Williams just didn't include that part of the interview that he did.
You saw our hands up.
Yet Parkinson says civility also means being willing to listen to your critics. Here in committee during the special session, Republicans attempted to run a bill to allow more guns in schools, cutting off debate before Democrats could raise any objections.
If you want to run this bill and ram it down everybody's throat and down these people's throat, you're doing exactly that, and that's wrong.
The scene was another reminder of how much.
So this was in committee. This was yelling between Todd Warner and Antonio. Antonio, are you there? Can you hear me? You still can't hear me. That was earlier.
I can't hear anything.
We hear you.
Hold on. All right, try it now. Say something now.
We hear you. Can you hear us? Still can't hear us. All right, that's bizarre. Folks that are watching, can you hear me? Let's try that. Make a comment if you can hear me. I would assume you can, or you would have told me something by now. But the point is, just to sum it up, Republicans in this state, they're the uncivil ones. They're the ones doing all these things. And
try to say something now, Justin.
And hey, Antonio, can you hear me? I'm sorry, we're having so many problems. All right, the people can hear us. It's Antonio's end that we're having trouble.
You hear me? I can't hear anything. Hold on. I'm going to log out and log back in again. All right.
All right. He's logging out, logging back in. So, when Democrats are given an opportunity to make that point, that it's not fair to just talk about those uncivil moments, quote unquote, from Jones and Pearson and not put it in context. And I would criticize that. I don't think that's the right thing to do for anybody, to act as though these small moments of protest in any way
Oh,
compare to the real incivility
now
in okay, now you hear me.
I can hear you good now. I
All
don't know
right,
what it
we're
was.
on. So
Okay.
so I think I've prepped the people enough, Antonio, with the piece. I showed them the piece. I showed them our tweet, and I'll show it to you again, which was, you know, if you're going to talk about civility, this is both sides of it. Like cutting mics, calling students moms insurrectionists, bumping Pearson, putting Gloria in a closet, the KKK statues, the war, all of that stuff to me is the real incivility. And my criticism of you in that moment was that you didn't take the opportunity to point that out.
Yeah.
So
And
now you wanted to hop on here and talk about it.
yeah. Well, first of all, it's always good to be on the show. First of all, and welcome back. And so I think it's important too to that people understand. Me and your relationship. We can, we can talk about anything, and so
Sure.
and I don't take any offense. To your question that you asked. I think you asked why I didn't say something about what's the question again? I left my glasses in the studio, so
It's on the
yeah.
screen. It
But
says, why didn't you say something about the GOP not being civil when you were asked about this? And I didn't have the full context of that interview that you did, so feel free to provide it.
Yeah. And so first, I think it's important that people know I wasn't asked to interview on that particular story, the particular story that you're talking about, the one that you're referencing that Phil Williams did. The what he got from me was from a previous interview, I think that I did probably about 3 weeks to a month ago. And and in that interview, it was an hour-long interview. I think it's called Behind the Lines or something like that, Behind the Lines. In that interview, we talked about all of the things that had happened, that happened in the session and in the previous session. And we talked about, silencing the members being expelled, and all of that. We even talked about when I, had my moment on the House floor when, I cursed everybody out, right, and shut down session, and out of that came the revelation of the $544 million owed to TSU. That's how that came about, right? And so I told Justin, for those of y'all that's listening on our morning call, I said, I thought it was a bit. He didn't know about the previous interview, so I said it was a bit unfair to ask that question, without asking me, because there was a previous interview, right? And I didn't even know this story was coming out, and until I saw it until you posted it. So that was my first time seeing the story, and but that piece that he got from me came from the previous interview that we did on Behind the Lines.
Right. And so that's, I think, a fair thing to point out. I didn't realize that. I only saw the piece that Phil posted, which we've shown people already earlier, and feel free to go back and watch it. So I didn't know that the context was that you had talked about other things that you weren't specifically talking about that. We got a few responses to that piece being like, the real incivility here is coming from the Republican Party and Cameron Sexton. And, why wouldn't you have said that? So if I ask you, do you still feel that you were represented properly in this Phil Williams piece, or do you think he should have included more context?
Look, I can't tell him how to write his story, just like you wouldn't budge on how you wrote yours, right? And so, but I stand by the words I said. I absolutely emphatically stand by the words I said. Getting in people's space. I just don't. And let me tell you how I get to that. I get to that because based on how I feel if somebody was to get into my space, right? Like, it would be problematic, right? And so I try my best personally, because I know how I am, to stay, out of those tight confrontational spaces, because I know how I am. I think that whether Phil Williams, provided, you know, the rest of the context, I think that's another conversation, to be honest with you, between, you know, those that, you know, have an issue with how he wrote the story. But what he put in there about me is the absolute truth, and those are my words, and I stand by them. I don't think it's necessary, you know, to you know, be in the member states. Just like I said, same thing with Justin Lafferty when he was doing all the stuff that he was doing. You know, I'm against that, right? Because somebody's gonna get their ass hurt. Somebody's gonna get knocked out. Somebody's gonna get, you know, and I just don't think that we should be, you know, going down that road because somebody will get hurt.
Okay, so one thing I just want to ask you if you agree with is if Pearson had done to Sexton what Sexton did to Pearson, Pearson would likely be in cuffs at that point.
Right.
That's
and
one thing I would point out.
Right, and that's absolutely true. But and let's reverse it. You know, if Sexton had came over there and got in Pearson's face, what would we be talking about? What would be happening right now? Pearson might have hit him in his mouth. You see what I'm saying?
The bigger point that I have here for you, and the issue that I had with the way that you were portrayed in the story, which it sounds like you sort of still believe in, is
I just believe in what I see.
It's one. What do you say? It's one thing to say, you know, okay, I wouldn't have done that, and you know, maybe you shouldn't be in anybody's space. But to me, if you don't also pair that with, but the reason we are where we are is because Cameron Sexton has been cutting microphones, ignoring grieving parents, fighting for KKK Grand Wizard statues. They're talking about war behind closed doors, and on and on and on. All the real policy incivility in Tennessee coming from the House Republicans. If you just say the part that you said without that part, it seems to be joining the Republican Party and frowning upon Pearson and Jones and the tactics they use, which, you know, they come out of a inability to access other ways to protest. It was 15 minutes into a session, they cut it off because they didn't want Jones to introduce his resolution, no confidence resolution. You know, these are the things that put us there. And so my issue is not so much that you said what you said and stand by it. It's that you didn't qualify it with but the real culprit here and the real incivility here is the Republican Party underneath Speaker Cameron Sexton. That's my issue.
And I understand that. However, I was not part of that interview. So there's no way for me to qualify it, right? But what does qualify, and I think that's important to know. Phil Williams did not interview me for that story. That's a clip that Phil Williams put in the story of me. So that's important for people to know. The other part is if everybody, and I encourage everyone to go back and watch Behind the Lines, you know, when I did it, you know, a few weeks ago, the majority of that hour was talked about, you know, how people were being treated by Republican members, you know, in the House that got us to this point. The clip that Phil Williams added to his story is a very, very small portion of the entire interview. So I probably spent 45 minutes talking about, you know, how people were being treated, how Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and everybody was being treated. Not just them, myself too. That's why we had the clip that you saw of us in education committee, because they were trying to pull a fast one on us. So
right. I guess what I would say to that is, like, then it seems like if I were you, my issue would be that Phil took a tiny piece of an interview to support this both sides piece that he was making about civility at the Capitol, and used you and Johnny Shaw, two Black Democrats, honestly, to help make the case that, you know, civility at the legislature is a both sides problem. And to me, that's really damaging and important, because it's not the reality of what's happening at the Capitol from my perspective, having been up there since 2019 on a pretty regular basis. You know, yes, sometimes protesters will chant, and, you know, there are things that happen, and, you know, but at the end of the day, the biggest points about what's going on up there are coming from the Republican Party. And to not make that point, which you say you did in another part of the interview that wasn't used. Right. So that's why I would be like, if I were you, I'd be like, hey, Phil, how could you take me out of context like that? What I really said was, you know, all this was the problem and this, but it doesn't sound like you want to do that.
Well, and I don't because what I said is what he used from me, the clip that he used from me is what I mean. I mean, look, regardless of what they do, you don't get in nobody's face. Let's not do that, right? Because they're going to taint all of your work based on that action. Number one. Number two, somebody's going to get the shit slapped out of them. And we don't want that either. So, they're everything I get, even and I say this in every press interview that I do about the Tennessee 3, their disruption was absolutely necessary, or we wouldn't even be having the conversation that we're having about guns and stuff, right? Right? You agree with that, right?
I absolutely agree with it. And I would ask you, were they supported when that happened by even their own caucus? Because at the time, but let me just finish. At the time, I remember, them being ushered off the floor by leadership, and there wasn't necessarily that support for what they did until it became a national story and started rolling. So, sometimes it's the backlash to the actions that get taken that help move the needle. And, those won't always be the most comfortable actions to take. But what's the phrase, find a way to get in the way? Like, it seems like it's bringing out the worst in Cameron Sexton in a way that wasn't happening before. And, if I'm a Democrat, I would be like, oh, well, we need more of that, not less.
Well, we can use as much of it as absolutely necessary, but we don't want to be in people's faces. And I wouldn't advocate that, and I wouldn't advocate for Republicans getting in the faces of Democrats. It's different. It's one thing for us to be defined. It's one thing for us to hold up signs. It's one thing for us to even shut down a session. It's another thing when we start physically fighting each other. And we don't need to be physically fighting each other. And I stand on it.
They didn't do that.
Right. No, I'm saying, but it could have been.
Sure. But they didn't do that. And Speaker Sexton is the one who initiated the contact.
Let me ask you.
The thing is, when you watch that piece, the Phil Williams piece, the takeaway is, well, even Parkinson and Shaw think Jones and Pearson are in the wrong. And there's no context for how we got to that moment. The mic's cut. I think the mic's cut come later, but there's no context in your interviews about that. And so it looks like,
well, I wasn't interviewed. I was not interviewed. So
I didn't know that at the time.
It looks like you were. Let's not paint it like I was interviewed, because I was not interviewed. All right. So let's be clear.
People didn't know that reached out to us. I didn't know that. It's good to know that now.
But we know it now, right? I was not interviewed for that story. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Now, again, even if they are doing the things that they are doing, shutting off mics, this, that, and other, so on and so forth, we still cannot return their uncivil actions and turn around and do the same shit. We can't turn around and get in somebody's face or there's many times where I'm sure that I may have wanted to smack shit out of somebody on that floor, but I can't do that. I cannot do that. That number one, it doesn't benefit my constituents. It doesn't benefit me, and it sure ain't gonna benefit the person that gets slapped, right? And so, but we cannot do that. Now, do we need to find other ways to get our point across? Absolutely. We don't want this to look like somewhere in Turkey somewhere where the damn House floor, there's a all-out brawl on the House floor. That's not what we're here for. No, and I would not.
That's not what Pearson and Jones were doing. I mean, let's be clear about what they did.
I'm not saying that they did.
Stood there with signs. He passed by them. They moved to let him by. Did Pearson get a little close in close quarters? Sure. But it's Sexton who threw the shoulder. And, I don't justify that.
And let me be clear.
Okay, but
And
it
I don't,
seems like
no, I don't justify
no,
it.
it's
I don't
not that it
justify.
seems like you did. It seems like the piece was doing a little bit of that, especially the way, Phil went out of his way to blow by blow the shoulder check and basically blame it at like,
Frame by frame,
Sexton
frame
fell,
by frame.
and was just trying to avoid a photographer and like didn't really try to initiate contact. The thesis of the piece is civility at the Capitol is a both sides issue. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I agree that we need.
Equally.
I agree that we have to get to a place to where we can have a conversation because nobody's listening to anyone right now. I truly believe that. I believe that
You're sort of answering. You're sort of answering your own question. Like, how do we get to that place if we just let things keep going business as usual?
Well, right now, this is business as usual. As crazy as things are, this seems to be the new business as usual, right? But we can't keep on going in this direction and expect to get things done for the people of Tennessee. The people of Tennessee don't want this bullshit. They want shit. They want their quality of life improved. They want health care. They want good education, and and I'm not giving you no political.
Is that happening?
Hell no, it ain't happening. No, it's not. No,
Exactly.
but and it's not going to happen if we cannot sit down, if we can't have a conversation. And it's not going to happen if we can't have a conversation.
The people we're talking about were the ones that were trying to have the conversation. The people who were leaving the dais and leaving special session after 15 minutes and cutting microphones and forcing women with signs out of committee hearings with troopers, they're the ones not having the conversation.
I understand it. So
when they're doing those tactics, like what would you suggest? I'm not saying they did the right thing, but
let me tell you what I wouldn't suggest.
I'm asking what you would suggest.
I'm gonna tell you what I would suggest after I'll tell you what I wouldn't suggest. What I wouldn't suggest is being involved or even however you want to say it, being involved in anything physical. So that's what I wouldn't suggest. All right. Now what I would suggest is that we keep the pressure on, right? Keep the pressure on. Let's figure out a way, to communicate to the people of Tennessee. Let's figure out a way to organize. Let's figure out a way to come up with legislation, that would either force them into a corner or force them to support it, right? And so those are the things that I would suggest. But physical confrontation, absolutely not. And I stand on it.
But that wasn't physical confrontation from their end. They were standing in a place that was obstructing. They were finding a way to get in the way. I'm just saying, I don't think either Pearson or Jones would say you need to have physical confrontations and fights to make your point.
Right.
I think they just like when they went to the well, I don't think either of them decided we're going to go stand in front of Sexton as he leaves the dais today when they woke up that morning. But just like when they went to the well, they were feeling a feeling from the gallery and from the people outside of frustration that nothing was being done, that they were being railroaded and that they were being cut off and they had to do something. And when they went to the well with the megaphone and a microphone, that was a release for people to be like, oh, finally something happened, or else it was just going to be status quo, business as usual. Nothing happened. I think it was a similar situation at the end of special session where they were feeling a feeling from the people outside and the people in the balcony. Oh my God, they're going to just shut down this House floor session after 15 minutes and nothing's going to happen. They're going to get to walk away. So how do you keep them from doing that without resistance? Well, you resist a little bit. And what does that look like?
No. I appreciate your warrior spirit, but no.
Yeah.
You don't impede anybody's way to get out to leave or anything. And I'm gonna tell you, and I'm giving you an example of what that happened on right after that incident. William Lambert
from leaving.
Let me finish. Don't come on, man. Don't camera sex me. Look, right after that incident with Pearson, William Lambert was impeding Pearson's way to move. And I told him, man, get your ass from in front of him. Let that man go. You don't impede anybody's way. Anybody's way. No. Now it's happening to Pearson, and it was my. If you look at the video, it's my arm that went between Pearson and William Lambert. They told William Lambert, man, get from in front of him, get out of his way, let him go.
Yeah,
right.
I would just disagree that they were actually impeding him.
And then, oh, what, William Lambert?
No, Pearson and Jones, when
I thought you just said that they got in his way. You just said that. They got in his way.
Yeah, they got in his way. They weren't impeding him.
Oh,
like, they
okay,
weren't, like, physically impeding him.
Right. Well, and I don't encourage that. And so what I'm saying is this: I don't think that we need to do anything or be even closely or remotely involved in anything that would, whether invoke or create a physical. Just hear me. Let me finish. Or create a physical confrontation with members on the House floor. I just vehemently disagree with that. Now, let me ask you this: Had let's say Justin was trying to leave, right? And the speaker ran down from the dais and was in the space, right? We're not saying impeding, but he was in the space, whatever he was doing the same exact action that Justin was doing. We would not be okay with that. We would not be okay with that.
I'm not asking you to be okay with that. I'm not asking you to be okay with that. What I'm asking you to do is provide context for how we got to that point, so that when you do make the point that you're making, you're not making it seem like what they did came out of nowhere and it was not justified or motivated. You know, the context of what's happening there is a lot of authoritarianism, a lot of discrimination. And I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And so when you say that, you frown on what they did without providing that context, which I know you're saying you didn't do that because it's part of the Phil Williams interview, but it's what I saw and other people saw in his piece. Then that bumps people because it's like, oh, you know, are Antonio and Johnny Shaw basically taking Speaker Sexton's side in all this and frowning upon their behavior? And, you know, I'm not asking you to like what they did, but it did seem to me like there was a lot of context missing from Phil's piece, which was intentionally both sidesing a civility issue that is very clearly one-sided.
Right. And, well, you know, now that's whether Phil Williams' story does that or not, you know, that's Phil Williams. But again, I was not interviewed for that story. And when you look at the full interview of the clip that he used, and I tell everybody, go to Behind the Lines, you're going to see that the majority of my interview was talking about how people were being silenced, how people were being treated, you know, and the whole thing that got us there. And then when I was asked by Bill Williams in the Behind the Lines interview, because I want to make sure everybody understands I wasn't interviewed for this story, but when I was asked about Justin Pearson's actions, I simply said what I said. I wouldn't have done it. You know, that wouldn't have been my thing. That I wouldn't have done it, right? And I wouldn't want it done to me. And so
I haven't seen the full interview. I think I understand what you're saying. I believe that's what happened. I will.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I guess the thing that I don't understand then is it sounds like what you're saying is Phil took you out of context and that the rest of what you said teed it up, but you don't seem to care about that.
And not because he didn't take what I said out of context. I said what I said, and I stand on what I said.
So if that's true, then I don't know that it actually.
Let me finish answering the question.
Where it came from.
Let me finish answering. Because I again, and I will say this again, and I keep on saying it. What the quote, what Phil Williams said, what Phil Williams posted from the previous interview in his new story, I mean exactly that. Right.
Okay.
So I'm not missing words.
What does it matter if it was an hour-long interview or it was on Behind the Line and not for this? What does it matter if you stand by that quote and what happened and what's in there? That's the part I'm taking issue with, and so it doesn't seem to really matter that it came from an hour-long interview.
How do you take issue with it and you hadn't even seen the full interview?
Because I take issue with what I saw in Phil's piece.
But you hadn't seen the full interview. It doesn't come
with context of how we got there. We're
right.
kind of going
But that's a conversation that you should have with Bill. But it's not
a conversation you should have with Phil.
I don't have an issue with what Phil said. I said with the quote that I said on that story because I stand by it.
Well, Christina's saying I love this Phil, but he made this problem you two are discussing, which sounds to be true. Just it's sort of a similar topic, but along these lines, like one of the things I think that I'm feeling in this that maybe shining through here a little bit is, there seems to be kind of two rationales among the Democrats. One is like, got to rabble rouse, got to, get the narrative out there. You got to let people know what's going on. And then there's another rationale that I've heard from a number of Democrats that are elected, which is like, we got to kind of play footsie with them, for lack of a better term, because that way we'll get bills passed and, we'll get, things through that we might not otherwise get if we like play ball with them, which to me seems like a very Lucy with the football situation. Cause I've been covering this thing for 4 years. I couldn't name a damn bill the Democrats have passed. So do you see that as the fork in the road, two choices to make, or is that a false choice?
No, I think that's false. I think that, being up there in the Tennessee legislature, you want to be effective for your constituents. Number one, you want to be effective for your constituents. My District 98, the people of Raleigh and Cordova, that's my number one priority. They are my number one priority.
Do you feel like you'll be able to get stuff done for them? Like I'm just asking because I'm not there. I don't know. Like, do you think you've been able to get stuff done for them in the legislature? Like what kind of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I think this in January, I think I might have passed. I don't know if it's 6 or 8 bills in January. I'm getting stuff done.
Give me one of them.
Oh man, about $500,000 to youth sports. Earlier got another $500,000 coming for workforce development for youth. Legislatively, all of the DNA stuff that I was running, ensuring that the hospitals are kept safe. That actually came from my hospital in my district, because people were shooting on the hospital grounds. So I had to do some legislation for that.
So the $500,000 to youth sports went to your district.
It actually went to youth sports organizations statewide that applied for it. But
what's the process for making that happen? Like, how do you get them to go? Okay, we need to steer 500. What's the process for getting? Because I don't think Jones got $500,000 for his district. So like, how do you get them to do that?
You got to pitch it, man. You got to pitch it, and it got to make sense, right? And sometimes you understand when here's a strategy that I use too. When I understand what their agenda is, I get creative and craft shit that will benefit my district through their agenda. They got the majority. Their agenda is they're the governing body, right? And so in order to create things that's going to be beneficial to my district, you want to find a way to be creative and make that shit happen. And that's what I do.
It seems like there's kind of two ways of looking at that, right? Like one way is, okay, you got to play ball, get stuff in my district. Not trusting these guys the way I do.
How do you get that out of that? You got to play ball to get stuff out of my district.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask. Could it be that with certain people, they're like, they want that civility to be maintained, so they earmark stuff to whoever. Like, do they do it so that they're, you know what I mean? Like,
no.
Do they feel like they're defanging certain people by steering money to their district?
No. Check this out. So, I don't know if the Republicans feel that way. I don't know. But here's what's important to me, right? You fight the fights that are necessary to fight. When we shut down the education committee because Mark White tried to do an end around on us and get the question called, right? We fought that fight, right? And we were able to kill Chris Todd's bill because we fought that fight. I want you to think about that. Chris Todd was trying to let.
I completely agree. I would just offer that that's what they're doing. It's necessary to fight for the gun safety laws. It's necessary to fight for, the special session to proceed accordingly. Like, those seem like necessary fights.
Yeah, but every fight is not a necessary fight. Every fight is not a necessary fight up there, right? but you fight the ones that are necessary, that are absolutely necessary. This bill was going to allow Proud Boys, anybody with a card, enhanced carry card, to come on the school campuses. That was a necessary fight, right? I'm not about to spend energy on bullshit up there with them. I'm dead ass serious when I'm up there, right? I'm trying to create wins for my district and fight those fights that are necessary. And now and that's, which is a great segue to what I want to say too, because I meant to say this earlier. You know, you kind of alluded to, and I get it. So you kind of alluded to that people wasn't getting behind, you know, Justin and Gloria and the other Justin.
I didn't kind of allude to it. I said it.
Right. Yep. Okay, you said it, right? But that's not true for me. You know, I've defended them if I feel like they're right. If I feel like they're right, if I feel like anybody is right, I would defend them to the end. And I've stood on that House floor and in committee and you know, and publicly and from day one and said, you know, number one, that disruption was absolutely necessary. Number two, that, you know, if that they were being treated unjustly. And so even on the House floor, and you in fact, you ran the video, you know, when they were trying to silence Justin, it was me that stood up and said, Mr. Speaker, you know, he deserves to finish his points.
That's why I was surprised to see this.
Yeah. So
that's why I was surprised to see you and Johnny in the Philippines.
Right. Now, all Democrats aren't doing what I'm doing. They're, you know, it just is what it is. You know, there are some that are supportive of them, and there are some that are not. There are some that don't like what's going on, and you know, and some that I won't do that. I won't do that. But there are some, you know, and you know, and I'm gonna tell you something too. Justin Jones, right? Justin Jones. You know, he in one of those moments, I don't remember which one, because it's been more than one time where I've stood up and stood up for him, you know, and backed him up. But he's come up to me and thanked me, right? Which I appreciate. But in that moment, I told him, I'm doing it because you were right. Right? You were right. I won't do it if I don't feel like you're right. I can't do it if I don't feel like you're right. Right? If you know, but when you are right and you are, you know, because you know I can't stand bullies, right? When you're right and you're being bullied, you're being mistreated, I'm all in for you. But you know, if it's something that may be a little questionable, the judgment might have been not, you know, I can't defend it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's asking you to defend something that you don't think is right. Although Sapicki had a great quote that said, "You got to do what's right, even when you think it might be wrong."
Even when you think it's wrong, right?
But no, my point wasn't that, like, how dare you say? My point wasn't how dare you say, you know, I wouldn't have done that. The point was
that's me personally.
Yeah, no, that wasn't my point. That wasn't my point. My point was, how do you say that and not then rattle off a list of reasons why they did what they did? And it's again, it sounds like you're saying you did kind of do that in the rest of the conversation with Phil. So, you know,
but see, that's cold-blooded what you're doing though, because you keep asking me that question. How can you say I wouldn't have done it without justifying what the Republicans have done?
Yeah,
as if I was interviewed on that story.
No,
and I was not interviewed. But so even you look, I mean, I get it, you know. But
no, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, like, because you now stand on what you said, I don't know that matters so much. You know, that's my point. Like, there may be all this context somewhere, but if I were you, I would be like saying something to Phil. So that's what
I don't have an issue with Phil. Phil did not take me out of context. Phil did not write his script and say, and Antonio Parkinson said such and such. What Phil did was Phil played a clip of what I said.
No, I got you. I think the bigger issue that I have is the both sides of them in general.
But that's an issue with you and Phil.
Right. And civility in conversation, you know, to me, it's like, it's not innocent. It's a big part of how we got here.
Right.
Because we've been acting like everything is a both sides issue. Even in Washington, D.C., even right now, as you know, Trump makes a headlong run at our democracy again after inciting an insurrection. You know, there's all these people that are sort of both sides again, and but you know, well, Biden's old, or you know, whatever it is, and it just seems like in the country and in Tennessee specifically, also, like we're so far past that with the people in charge. You know, it just seems to give them cover. That's what I'm looking. That's the word I'm looking for. It seems to give them cover, and I would offer that, you know, in the future, you know, maybe beware of that and you do what you want, obviously, but you know, any effort to give them
You
cover.
still there? Sorry about that. My staff was texting me. I'm sorry. Say it again.
No
I'm
problem.
sorry. Yeah.
I was saying that I think, to put a finer point on it, what I'm feeling is it gives them cover to both sides things. Not that you're doing that, Phil's doing it, and they're doing it at the national level also, and it's giving Trump cover. And we're in a moment in our society, in our country, where we're way past both sides of things, giving cover. You know, we have to call things what they are and stand up to it. And this piece to me was, I thought, damaging because it painted a picture of both sides being equally at fault, which I don't believe it is. And I think you played a part in that piece unwittingly, but you don't seem to necessarily mind it that much.
I don't think I played a part because I disagree with that statement, right? That I played a part in anything. I wasn't even part of the interview. I wasn't even part of the story.
You're in the piece.
So
He used you.
I'm not. So I didn't play a part in anything, right? Okay. Any of that, you know. But let me say this though, and I think it's important for everybody that's watching to understand is that you know we have to be careful, right? We have to be careful of taking the bait that would give them the ammunition to even say that we're part of the problem. It makes sense.
Sure.
And so yeah, and I think that's important to note. You know, we can't. The worst thing that can happen to us is they pull Justin or the other Justin or Gloria into a situation to where they make them seem seem like they're unfit or whatever the thing is, and we don't want their work to be marred by some bullshit, right? And I'm gonna tell you, and I'll tell you this too. Yes, you've never seen Gloria Johnson, go and get in the face of speaker. Never. You've never even seen Gloria Johnson raise her voice or curse at one of the other members. She's never ever done that. Ever. I've never, in all of the time I've been serving with her, I've never ever seen her do that or get in somebody's face or and I'm not saying they did that. I'm just saying, or anything remotely close to it. You follow me? And I think that's important. I think that's important to note. I think that, we do have, believe it or not, even after I cut up on the House floor, right? You'll never see me cut up on the House floor like that again. I did it, right? I did it in shutdown session, a few years ago when they didn't pass that resolution for the 17-year-old young lady that got killed coming from buying a blunt. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I remember.
Right. And but I'll never do it again. And it's not because I was threatened or anything, which they did talk about expulsion and all that stuff too. But it's because that's not the way to do it. It's just not the way to do it. And we all have those moments when we are emotional. I'll never get in anybody's face again. I don't know if I ever got in anybody's face like that, but I had a person get in my face one time and I want to slap the shit out of him. Tim Wergo got in my face and was pointing up at me like this one time, right? And talking crazy, right? And as a matter of fact, it was because Justin got on the elevator with me and Tim was on the elevator. And Justin got off the elevator and was following them down the hall and, whatever was happening, right? So Tim Wergo came up to me and was, you know, in my face, and I didn't like it. I had to let him know that, you know, he's about to get his ass beat. And so, but I don't want to beat anybody's ass on the house floor. That wouldn't be good for me. They'll kick me out. I lose my position, you know, or whatever it is, right? And it's not a good representation of my constituents either. And so I just want us to stay away from anything that would give them the ability to try to taint our work.
I fully get that. I'm not saying that you need to support what they did necessarily. I just feel like context would have been helpful in that moment. And I know we're going in circles now. Do you have any?
Context.
Right. I know. I know.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say? How about before we go here, what's going to happen in the Memphis mayor's race?
Ooh, man, you know, I'm pulling for Paul Young, man. I hope Paul Young wins. He's young, smart. He's a worker. He's good people, solid. You know, real integrity. I'm hoping that he pulls it off. You know, we're you know, in Memphis, you know, we're definitely at the crossroads, and you know, we have to do something. We have to do something different than what we've been doing, and it's you know, people are suffering, and I hope that, you know, regardless, whoever gets elected, you know, I hope it's not business as usual. Let me say it like that.
All right, Antonio, thanks for coming on here.
Man, I
you being willing to
appreciate
talk
it,
this
man.
through.
Yeah, man, anytime.
I hope you feel like you got to say what you need to say, and you know, we'll just keep the conversation going.
Okay, man, and make sure you call me later on and tell me that I convinced you, you know, that I was right. All right.
I don't think I'll be able to do that. All right, man.
All right, man. All right, man.
Take care.
Peace out, man. Love y'all. Send my love to the family, man. Appreciate you.
All right, appreciate it. So that is Rep. Antonio Parkinson about the situation, the piece that Phil Williams made about civility, and the tweet that we posted asking why he didn't divert it back to Republicans. He is saying that the piece that Phil used was just a small piece of a bigger interview that he did with Phil, where he did say a lot of that stuff, which I didn't know because it wasn't in the Phil piece. And so that's helpful context. But he is still basically saying that he's okay with the piece. And, you know, my thing is, like, standing in front of Cameron Sexton and slowing him down briefly is such a minor thing compared to, and I know he's not saying it isn't, but a minor thing compared to all the bullshit in Tennessee at the Capitol with Speaker Sexton, the way that they've treated women and, you know, the mothers and Justin. And, you know, it's just when Democrats are asked about civility, for them not to be like, all the shit that they're doing is really what's uncivil around here, not holding a pink fluorescent sign, standing in front of Speaker Sexton and getting shoulder checked. You know, for them to leave that out, for Phil to leave that out, like, that seems outrageous, frankly. And, you know, I'm going to go back and watch the piece that he's talking about, the interview with Phil from a few weeks back that Phil took those excerpts from, just to see. But I personally, you know, if I were Antonio, I would have a problem with sort of being taken out of context that way without including that other stuff. And, you know, I guess that's where we'll have to leave it. So, you know, no matter how you feel about what Justin did standing in front of Cameron Sexton, you know, it is important to shake things up. It's a microcosm of what they did by going to the well a few months back. And, you know, I personally feel like I would rather err on the side of, you know, not necessarily physical confrontations, but getting in the way and, you know, showing the world who they are. And moments like this kind of do that, in my opinion. So I'm not condoning physical contact, but I'm certainly not frowning on expressing the frustrations of the crowd by, you know, standing in front of the speaker and making a point. And I think it's very clear that Speaker Sexton is the one that initiated the shoulder contact there. Justin did not go there looking for a fist fight. And, you know, I think it's important to point that out every chance you get. So appreciate Antonio coming on here. Appreciate you guys hanging in there through the technical difficulties. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out at the TN Holler, the TN Holler at gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.